Today I'm joined by the host of the Sleep Study podcast, a man deep in his faith, a man who has explored the lyrics of Sleep Token, the iconography, through the lens of Carl Jung, Rumi, and other great thinkers. It has been such a pleasure to have this deep conversation with him. However, I want to offer a caveat. This is going to talk heavily around his faith, around Christianity. We talk a lot about God, religion, philosophy, through my lens of Carl Jung and I guess mysticism and Gnosticism. We also talk heavily about what it is to be a good human and the fact that everything that is art, we project our unconscious contents onto. So allow this to be a mirror to show you parts of yourself that you're triggered by, that you cannot see for yourself. Maybe you're an atheist, maybe you're a non-believer, agnostic, Christian, Muslim, whatever it is. This is an amazing conversation for two people from two completely different walks of life that have a thing that joins us together deeply with common themes, obviously. And we explore these topics in such a wonderful, almost 2-hour conversation. Thank you so much for being here. And if you want to support the channel, please like, comment, share. And if you feel called to, don't hesitate to buy me a coffee either. The link is down in the description. The same as for the Sleep Study podcast. All of the links are down in the description. Go follow him over on Instagram. Check out all the memes that get shared as well. And go follow him on all the great channels so that you can hear a different way of appreciating Sleep Token through Rumi, through psychology, through Carl Jung, and just embrace it all. This is a wonderful medium for us to all connect together through an amazing band and art like Sleep Token. So thank you so much for being here, and let's get into it. The thing that I value more than anything is 3 things. It is authenticity, it is transparency, and it is vulnerability. Appreciate you for being here. Let's get into the video. Welcome to the R.Y.S.E podcast. I'm Dave, and we are joined by the host of the Sleep Study podcast. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, Dave, thank you for having me. I'm real excited, man.
Now, I don't know if you guys have jumped over to his side of things and gone through his extensive library of breaking down all of the songs, literally song by song, adding in some beautiful components of Jungian analysis and Rumi and just all these wonderful things. But it's not just from a perspective of being someone who's an intellectual or even from someone who's obsessed with Sleep Token. This is a man who clearly has deep faith in the divine. So I want to open up the floor and say, and just ask you, like, what is the first thing that captivated you about this band? Because we've all got our own little unique thing, unique story that brought us to it and that called us into, I guess, a bit of reverence and a bit of awe. So what was your story with discovering the band?
Yeah, so I discovered the band right around, I think it was right after they released the entirety of the 2 EP and Jaws, I think. Uh, so the first thing that captivated me, this is very early on, kind of in their career as a group, and it was it was Vessel. It was Vessel's get up. It was his whole costume and everything, and I was like, what is that? And like this is, but then you listen to the music. And it's like, I can't remember who described it this way, but it's like Sam Smith vocals with like Meshuggah, like kind of breakdowns, if you want to call it that. And that, it was a really unique sound, especially the song Nazareth really drew me in because I was like, okay, this song it's dark, but it's like strangely reverent. And it was that strange balance of tones that really kind of drew me into the whole story of it all. But as far as like when I got, as you might say, obsessed with it, and it became like a total hyperfixation for me, was probably right after the release of Take Me Back to Eden. And I think most people are probably on board with me with that. Uh, just because, you know, Take Me Back to Eden was just so special, man. Like it felt like it was all kind of building up to that. And then I just had all these theories in my head, all of these, ideas of the story that I'd just been sitting on for years. And I was like, and my wife did not care the least bit about it. And so I was like, I got to talk to somebody about this. And so that was kind of part of the starting point was I had a buddy who would talk with me a little bit about it, and I was like, man, like I'd been typing out all my theories about the band, and I was like, what if I just did a podcast? Like, what if I just like did it episode by episode and just kind of see where it kind of takes me as far as the interpretation goes, and just kind of let it kind of play out naturally like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I got started and how I kind of ended up where I am.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that a lot. One of the things when I first found them in, I want to say 2021, it was probably around
Hmm.
when I think it was This Place Will Become Your Tomb. It was like when they were dropping singles for that because Nick Nocturnal
Yeah.
reacted to, I can't remember which was the first one. It might have been Alkaline. Anyway, so like I watched his channel for a long time, and like that's where I find most of my modern metal bands that become, favorite bands of mine. I find them through his channel because most of my friends, like we're in our mid-30s, we've got families, we've got careers, we've got all the things going on. So going out to random shows, that used to cost somewhere between $10 and $20 isn't a thing anymore. Like it's organizing kids, it's organizing babysitters, it's making sure that our partners are happy for us to go out, it's making sure that we're not having to do anything around work and like all the responsibilities. So going and seeing random shows to all of a sudden discover a new band or these sorts of things, they're not available to us anymore. And then so I use Nick Nocturnal as a pseudo friendship where I'm like, he's like, hey, check out this band. I'm like, sick, let's see if they're good, let's see if they're up my alley for
Yeah.
taste and all the different things that I'm looking for in art. And then when I heard it, I could not believe it. I was dumbfounded. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is some of the most beautiful, angelic, like atmospheric, like fills inside of the background of the tracks. But then there's this pure artistry and ooze that comes out of this singer. And then, like, I used to complain about his voice a little bit because I was like, he's putting too much sex into his voice. I'm like, yes, you have a beautiful voice. Clearly, you're classically trained, but like, bro, like, it doesn't need to be that deep. And because
That's
ultimately,
hilarious.
I was a hater at the start. And then when I just like, I kept listening to him here, there, and everywhere pretty much. And then I started getting into all of their discography, and I hated the first few songs until we got to Jaws. I was like, it takes too long to get into the song, build it up, hurry up. Like, I was very much entitled coming from a listener perspective. And then when they dropped This Place Will Become Your Tomb, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm starting to understand it more now. And then that's where I started becoming like a deeper fan because, like, don't get me wrong, Take Me Back to Eden, especially when the summoning went viral on TikTok and everyone was hearing that change up and all the reactors were losing their minds. Like, yeah, I was there alongside of them. However, listening to some of the other songs like, Telomeres, not many people talk about Telomeres. That is a hauntingly
I
beautiful.
agree.
I really wish that they looped that chorus at least another time through that because it's so beautiful. But like, we all we can do is hope and hope that they continue producing new music and like there's things inside of it that are calling us forward, whether you like it or not. Whether from a linguistic standpoint, from a artistry, musically, like I mean, even just listening to Two's drumming is phenomenal. Those tracks, the tracks that they did in the old church where they recorded the first two albums, I think it was, where
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was giving his offerings for drumming. Oh my, amazing, hauntingly beautiful.
Yeah, man, hauntingly beautiful. That is the word I would use to describe it. I totally get where you're coming from when you talk about the one EP especially. Yeah, it just takes some adjusting, like for sure. And I'll be honest, I mean, I got into them, two and Jaws, but like I said, I wasn't in until uh gosh, probably about where you were, probably about this place will become your tomb. Now, I will say getting to watch as they released each single for Sundowning one by one in real time. I think that was 2019. Oh man, that was really cool. That was really cool. And I still wasn't fully on board yet. Uh, but yeah, I understand. I can understand where some people, if you're not used to Well, let me put it this way. It depends what you're looking for in music. If you're looking for, the type of music that plays on the radio, the type of music that, is all about hooks, all about, uh, quick gratification, if you will. Sleep Token's not necessarily about that. It's never really been about that. It's more about creating the space, like creating this kind of like mental space that really just activates your imagination and then just lets it run wild. That's what I absolutely love about Sleep Token is that every song they write puts a picture in my head. And I feel like that's something Vessel does so, so well with his lyrics is he's just so every line he writes just paints this picture for you. And for everybody, that picture is obviously a little bit different. You're going to have a lot of people whose interpretations of a particular song might vary very differently from mine, just purely based on, their experience, how it just kind of comes across to them. But yeah, man, I totally understand. Hauntingly beautiful. What a great way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was first listening to them, I only exclusively listened to the heavy songs because I was a metalcore, deathcore absolutist. I was like, I don't listen to anything else. It's either metalcore, deathcore, or EDM, house, hardstyle, dubstep sort of thing. And there's no, I mean, obviously I've got a chill playlist and I meditate and all these sorts of things, but I was like, we keep clear distinctions, we put boundaries between everything, and we don't make overlaps. And now here I am listening to Damocles, which essentially, or, Damocles and Caramel could have easily been written by Ed Sheeran. It's such a weird overlap. I go from listening to, essentially Parkway Drive, I Killed the Prom Queen, August Burns Red, like that echelon of 2000s metalcore sort of thing. And then to go from that to Sleep Token, when I remember the first time I heard Sugar and I was like, oh, cool, this is baby making metal. I get that, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the thing about, I mean, like Sleep Token, we're about to start reopen the whole debate on is Sleep Token metal, and it's a legitimate question. I don't know how to answer it. Uh, but if it is metal, it's more than just metal. It's more than just any one genre. What they do so well is they just blend these different genres so together in a way that's palatable and approachable. Because something, I get in my comment sections all the time is, these people who are like, well, Sleep Token's not doing anything special. So and so from the 15 whatevers has already done this. It's like, okay, well that's great that they did that, but Sleep Token's doing it now and they do it really well. And they're doing it in such a way that obviously appeals to a lot of people. And I think part of that is that yes, they implement different genres, and typically their songs towards the end typically go heavier. That's typically what we've come to expect for the most part. But gosh, it just feels natural.
Mm.
Like it just feels like it makes sense. Like it's all building up to that in a way, um, in a way that's really, really gratifying. And it just makes sense to me. And yeah, it's like besides the drums, I mean, the guitars and the bass, there's not a whole lot of necessarily crazy stuff going on, but I don't think I really want there to be for the most part. I
Mm.
think there is beauty in simplicity sometimes. There's beauty in picking one thing and letting that one thing shine, whether that be Vessel's vocals or Two's drumming, just to kind of let those parts shine because those are obviously their strengths. And I think part of being a good musician is knowing where your strengths are and knowing how to take these other instruments to support what you do best.
Yeah, that's honestly well said. I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls that a lot of bands get kind of put in a box to it only exist in. I don't know if you know much about Parkway Drive, but their last album, they tried some real wild stuff. They
Yeah.
essentially released their version of oh, what was that Metallica track? Nothing Else Matters. So Darker
Yeah. Yeah.
Still was them going, hey, musically, instrumentally, we're at a place where we can push the envelope and we want to try some new things. And so, like the first three albums of Parkway, the EP, Killing with a Smile and Horizons, I mean, to an extent, Deep Blue as well. But they were like, no, you're a metalcore band. Let's play crazy, like 5/7/8 riffs. Let's do some big breakdowns. We'll do some two-step parts. And then like, that's kind of us. And then they started exploring, and everyone was like, "No, like you're butt rock now, you're dad rock now. Like, cut it out, go back to your roots, do with all the things." And everyone just started whinging at them. And then you get bands
Yeah.
that are consistent. You got, your Kill Switch Engage, your August Burns Red. They're so consistent with their sound that people are like, "Oh, this same thing again." You can't win.
Right.
And then you've got Sleep Token who are like, "Hey, we're musically well trained and executed enough to know when a song doesn't need to be a like vicious metal part, or like let's just do a a jazz song. Let's do Aqua
Yeah.
Regia where it's a perfect jazz, just gorgeous thing where anyone could be sitting in a lounge of a Saturday evening, sipping on some whiskey and a cigar, and have that in the background, and no one would know different."
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you, man. I hear you. Yeah, especially the August Burns Red thing. Yeah. Now August Burns Red is great. Not bashing them at all, but you're absolutely right. Where it's like they know their audience and they have not strayed from it. And so if you like Parkway Drive, or you've not Parkway Drive, if you like August Burns Red and bands like that, you're always gonna like them because they're all not never gonna change. But Sleep Token, they're all about change. Uh, that's their literal tagline is that nothing lasts forever, and so it's like you have to get comfortable with the fact that this part of them that you might have loved in the past, it could very well change, just like people change because musicians are people. And so I have heard one theory, and I'm still pondering it over as far as the significance of their, it's not new anymore, but they changed the mask like a while back from the black, I don't know what you call it, balaclava mask to what they have now. And I did see one theory online of someone saying that the new masks represent your fear of change, the fear that you project onto them of things being different, of things changing. The mask or the new get up might reflect that because I remember when they first came out, everyone's saying they look kind of scary, and I agree. And now whether that was their intention or not, I can't say. I can't read their mind, but it does make you think. It is something to think about. It's not entirely wrong because I didn't necessarily love the new masks right when they came out. Now they've grown on me a lot. I like them now. But yeah, I think we all have kind of this innate hesitation towards change. And that's something Sleep Token kind of really points out for us in ourselves is that, whenever things are different, you're going to get a big reaction out of people. And Sleep Token does that really well is they know how to get a big reaction out of people, whether that be positive or negative or gosh, with Caramel, they essentially split the whole fan base against itself. Uh, yeah, they know how to get a reaction. Yeah.
Yeah, the new mask thing, it's weird for myself. I don't pay attention to the way that they look so much. Like I let the art, I mean, visually that's one part of the art. But I don't pay attention to live shows. I don't pay attention to, the mask that they wear or anything like that too much because I care about the music more than anything. Like I've said before, I don't care about the people behind the mask. Granted, like I said in my recent video talking about Damocles, where I was like, I know the names of all of them. Like I couldn't control that curiosity piece inside of myself. I wanted to know. And so I went and looked and I was like, cool, what the hell am I doing with this knowledge now? Like I have some names of some people that wear, black robes and masks to play beautiful music to tens of thousands of people worldwide. Like whoop-de-doo. And so that's one part of myself that I'm like, well, their aesthetic, that's one part of it that I just don't really care. Like whatever they go through is cool. And to be honest, I don't even know what the new masks look like. Like I saw them this time last year when they came out to Australia, and it was a mind-blowing, beautiful experience where it was the only time that I've been in a crowd of, 10, 15,000 people where there was pure silence. Like people weren't singing, they weren't cheering, they weren't hollering. Everyone was in essentially a trance. They were just in awe of what was, which was wonderful. But like, yeah, the
Yeah.
stage spectacle and the lights and everything like that, and Vessel dancing around like he's a possessed little, with his little hippie hops that he does. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I just look at their aesthetics and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, do you, all good. So, but then the thing that I wonder for myself, because, everything comes down to the thing that we project unconsciously onto the band. I wonder what part of myself that am I projecting onto them with, the whole aesthetics and like, yeah, who gives a shit? Like, I don't care what you look like. I wonder where that comes from inside of me. Like
Hmm.
because you've come from a Jungian perspective as well. I've put the Jungian perspective as well, that we all project unconscious contents, whether we like it or not. That's kind of the way that we navigate through life. So the things that we see, the things that we refuse to see inside of ourselves, they're the things that we often demonize in other people.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know where that sits for myself. It's honestly, it's not something that I've considered until this point. So I'm probably going to take a note for me to do a little bit of introspection around that.
Yeah. A little introspection, I think, would do us all a lot of good, I think. But yeah, man. Yeah, it's refreshing to hear someone say that they don't actually care that much about the masks or what they look like. Honestly, probably until I started the podcast, I'd probably be right there along with you. Uh, but then I started the podcast, and everyone's asking me my thoughts on the mask and if there's significance to them, and so now I'm having to pay very close attention to, is there significance to the mask? And there probably is. I think Sleep Token does a lot of stuff with intention. Um, but I'll be honest, man, I have a lot more questions than answers when it comes to Sleep Token, and that's a place I'm kind of comfortable sitting in. Uh, and it's kind of fun just to kind of it's like Sleep Token's like putting a puzzle together without the box, for reference. That's part of the fun of it. I think we all like a good puzzle. But especially when you get something like Sleep Token where, the mass and the lyrics and the story, it's not just a gimmick. It's like as you've said, they're clearly inviting you into something. Um, Vessel, the person writing the lyrics is very much clearly going through something on his own that he is working out through this music that he's very much inviting us as the listeners into. And yeah, and that just makes it so personal. It makes it so personal and just so fascinating. And yeah, and I'm right there with you. I mean, like I know their names too. I know their faces too. Um, but it hasn't really changed much for me.
Mm.
Yeah, and some people, I think a lot of people are afraid that if they learn that stuff, that it's going to ruin it for them. And I'm like, if it's going to ruin it for you, you're probably a little too caught up in the visual aspect of it anyway. Because Vessel has said from the very beginning, like, dude, I'm nobody. Like, this isn't about me. This is about all of us in a way. That Sleep Token is inviting us all into this introspective kind of experience that's being told through this story that Vessel has created around the band. And I think whenever we fixate ourselves too much on maybe the person uh, behind the mask, we can kind of lose the point of that in the way that we are being invited into something a little more introspective um, than just your average band.
Yeah, definitely. So the only other bands that I've ever been into that have called that introspection has been Tool. Especially the songs Lateral, well, the whole Lateralis album, to be honest. 46 and 2, like The Grudge, like Parabol, Parabola, like there's so much linguistic, not to mention the film clips, that calls you forward and goes, hey, there's a part of yourself that you haven't reconciled with, that you haven't even become aware of yet. Like it's time to let's do some introspection around that. Let's do some digging through the depths of all of the things that you've just pushed behind into the shadow that you don't want to become aware of. You know, you like the song 46 and 2, or right into like the duality aspect of things, the shadow aspect of things, like the lyrics to 46 and 2, where he says my shadow, over and over and over. Like every time I heard that, it was around the same time where I was first getting into like Jordan Peterson, first hearing about Jung properly for the first time, and it was such an awakening moment for me. And then hearing Sleep Token, and you know, with the then adding the lens of Jung onto it, going, hang on, like there's something deeper here, and I don't know what's being called out from underneath. So like I'm curious, and curiosity is one of the things that I hold myself by, is like no matter what, if something captures my attention, I know there's a damn good reason for it. And so I'm kind of going to go along with it for a little bit and have a look, and then see what's there. And if it's something that's, you know, hedonistic, or if it's something that's left unhealed inside of myself, okay, perfect. Let's have a look at that. Let's explore it to its completion. So if I'm unaware of things in my shadow, how are they showing up when I'm unaware of them coming out into the light? Does that make sense?
Yeah, man, that's really interesting. I will say Carl Jung opened up Sleep Token for me. Like, I mean, there's still a ton of mystery around Sleep Token. There probably always will be. But once you start looking into Carl Jung and you start looking at Sleep Token through that lens, you're like, oh, holy crap. Like, I'm still confused, but somehow this makes a lot more sense. What's going on here? Like, I'm not just confused anymore.
Mm,
Like, there is a method to the madness, if you will. Um, and yeah, I think that's when things really started to click for me, is when I started digging into Carl Jung. And honestly, I probably should have started off the podcast from that perspective. But, well, actually, the more I look into Sleep Token's older stuff, and I guess this is where really going to get into Jung territory. I think Sleep Token has always kind of been about development and change, in the sense that I think like the one EP, for example, is very much inspired by things like Faust, that by Goethe, that play where a dude sells his soul to the devil. The one EP gives off that vibe real hard, especially in the music video for Thread the Needle. You literally see Vessel doing this ritual inside of what looks to be a pentagram or pentacle. And it very much gives that vibe. And it's not really until I think about well, no, even sundowning is when they start getting into alchemy and stuff like that. But it's really, I think, where we get to this place will become your tomb, is where the concept of the anima, sleep being associated with the anima, really just gets brought out, as you have so highlighted in just absolute masterclass of a video that I've watched so many times. Yeah, Jung is one of the biggest, most effective interpretive keys whenever you're interpreting or trying to understand Sleep Token and the method of their madness, if you will.
definitely. So the thing that I love about using Jung as a lens to navigate life through is he provides you the symbols for interpretation from the outside world, because all unconscious content is symbolic in nature. Whatever you see in the outside world, you have a map to navigate that terrain successfully. It's because he's maps out the psyche in such a, I mean, don't get me wrong, no one truly maps out the psyche. Like there's always emerging things happening, and everyone, you know, like because consciousness is individual to the person, you're never going to have a full representative map of consciousness. It's just not going to happen. It's all experiential, it's perspectival, it's, you know, trauma related. Like there's so many lenses that you have to like stack on top of one another. However, using Jung gives you a better framework to see things like, oh, he's doing this as a ritual as a part of this archetype. And, you know, the mask is a clear expression of the persona, you know, and the way that the persona has changed through Vessel's mask changing over the years. The first one that we saw was as I put out in my video, was the rod of Asclepius with the single snake coiling up it. That's the symbol for transformation. He's constantly working on himself, constantly healing. So why would we not see that evolve? Especially, talking symbolically with the first mask, he has no cutout for him to speak. He is just persona. No, like there's no him coming through. And then the first, like the after the first mask with Asclepius, then we move on to the mask with the cutout, and you can see a little bit of him coming through. You can see him talking, you see his mouth, and then we move. Sorry, there's one mask in between that. Then it moves on to that one. Then we've got the next mask with the fangs, the teeth of God, that with all the blood around it. And then after that, we see the new one with the green and gold and white. Like that's clearly okay. This is a symbolism for the green is we're in utopia. We're in the Garden of Eden. Like we literally have been taken back to Eden. Sure, the teeth of God are still there. However, there's a lot more beauty. There's regality to it. There's, reverence and awe and beauty. Like you look at, I can't remember the practice from Japanese culture, but where they use, whenever pottery breaks, they use the gold to put it together. So it's like even
Kintsugi.
in Suki, even in fractured repair, there's beauty, there's divinity. And so that symbolism that we can map through Jung, it just makes everything, it adds a layer of depth and beauty to it that something that I'm trying to bring from my life is more mythopoetics. Because the more that we live through myth, the more that we live through story, go back to Joseph Campbell, Jung, like go through all of the mystical traditions, there's a reason why the stories and the symbols related to those people and why they lived in relative harmony. Yeah, there was war and there was invasions and all that sort of thing. However, people had myth. They had deep fundamental presuppositions under society that held them up.
Yeah, man. Especially what you were talking about, symbols and stuff. Gosh. So I am a visitor in this world of Jung. You seem to be more of a resident. Yeah, you're you're a lot more familiar with this. Honestly, I had no clue who Carl Jung even was, to be frankly honest, until Sleep Token, until I started looking into them. But one thing about Jung that I found really interesting is when he talks about the world of gods and myths is nothing but the collective consciousness inside of me, and starting to understand that this drama that Vessel is playing out for himself. Yes, it's happening kind of in his psyche, but that if we're talking Jungian wise, just because it's happening in your head doesn't necessarily mean it's not real. It doesn't mean it's not actually affecting something outwardly. And yeah, Sleep Token, gosh, it's just levels of meaning. And you were talking about the mass kind of developing and changing. And as you know, Carl Jung developed a fascination with alchemy. And the whole end goal of alchemy has to do with, well, you're going to turn this into gold at the end of it. And as you're doing it, you're going to project your mental faculties, yourself onto these materials. And as they change and become purified into gold, you yourself are actually undergoing a spiritual process that kind of mirrors that in the same way. And I think you mentioned the green and Vessel's get up now, and I've noticed there's a lot of gold in there now too. Now it's not all gold. I don't know if we'll ever see an all gold Vessel, but I think where Vessel was at the beginning of his discography and where he is now, there's some very clear progress in his mind as far as who he was before, who he is now, and how he's grown and developed and become closer to becoming his true self, completing this process of individuation, as Jung would put it. Um, he's not quite all gold, but there's definitely some gold in the process for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And the weaving, it's like the thread the needle comes to mind with all of I see the words as if written by gold ink as that alchemical process. The thread of that needle is the gold that is weaving everything together. Like this is a grand tapestry. And so, mapping that symbolic onto it, we've got uh, we've got that gold thread in the what are they, the fields of quiet and loamy. fertile grounds. So that golden thread weaving through everything, alchemizing everything that it touches, essentially like there's a potential, there's something that I haven't spoken about before because I didn't want to go that far into the future and project that much because who am I to say that? But like the Midas touch could become a real thing in the next coming albums as well. As he steps further and further into embodiment and literal becoming gold, projecting his unconscious content into the material to create this tapestry of pure artwork and gold and reverence and awe, and where everyone is just losing their minds, especially with this new label that they've signed to, and with the contract this big with a company this big, there's going to be further albums that are going to become more mainstream. There's going to be more popularity, more marketing budget behind it all. And it could get to the point where we actually see like the curse of the Midas touch come out, where everything is actually gold and it goes gold and platinum in the mainstream, where everyone's like, this is a curse now. This isn't what we wanted. We wanted to be a part of this, but now it's with normies, so to speak. We wanted this to be private. We want to keep it and protect it. If anything, we want to be selfish and have it for ourselves. But that's going to be like the way I see things potentially moving in the future is like, yeah, it could be an all gold thing where he alchemizes everything perfectly and he's like, I don't even want this. Like this is a curse now. I touch it, I touch everything and it's gold. Not to mention the fact that, sorry, I'm going on a bit of a tangent here. Not to
Oh,
mention
this
the
is
fact that
genius.
the they're at this place now where Take Me Back to Eden went to the heights that it did. That puts you in an echelon of people, of artists, of creative minds where people are going to be reaching out. Imagine this is a dude who clearly wants to be left on his own, who lives in private and like wants to keep it that way. Imagine people like, well, let's use the Ed Sheeran analogy here. People like Ed Sheeran's manager reaching out, going, "Hey, we love what you're about. We love the creative thing. Would you like to come and collaborate anonymously on this track?" Imagine how many phone calls and emails and messages and stuff band's management is going to try and get through to Vessel right now.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, gosh, that Midas touch analogy, that's genius. You might have just predicted the future right there. Uh, uh,
I hope not, because
yeah,
like
I
it,
hope not either. But yeah, man, I hope you didn't just predict the future, but I fear you very well might have. Yeah, I I I understand. With when bands blow up, there's a trade-off with that. I think I've mentioned in my Damocles episode that there's always a trade-off whenever you sign to a label, especially a label as big as RCA. The good part of that is that you're going to be able to get your music to a whole lot of people, and you're going to have a whole lot of resources available to you. But the bad news of that is that you got to satisfy the label, and the label, you know, their business is, it's art and it's music, but they have to sell it, and they're trying to sell it to as many people as possible. And so, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point we see fewer 6-minute songs, fewer 7-minute songs. I think there will always be, as long as Sleep Token exists, there will always be a DNA of that in there. Um, but I'm expecting change. I'm certainly expecting change, and I think most of us are. And I think part of this album, even in Arcadia, like the songs we've heard so far, I mean, uh, Emergence was very much along the lines of kind of what I was expecting from this album, but Caramel and Damocles, those are songs that people could argue are a bit more mainstream, a bit more popish, may be able to appeal to a broader audience. And I think part of this album is kind of meant to prep us for that, hey, you know, I can't always be killing the game, especially with the circumstances that he's in right now. Um, Things are going to be different, and fans have to be ready for change.
mm, yeah. I mean, The first song, Emergence, was definitely like what you said, what we were expecting. Like it's the evolution of what we heard from Taking Back to Eden. It's like it was the next logical step, especially after all the language around becoming someone new, especially around, like ascensionism, Take Me Back to Eden, like all of the themes inside of that were essentially like, I've come to terms with what was, and now you need to come to terms, like as in him to sleep, is you need to come to terms that I am here and I'm not going anywhere, and we need to, let bygones be bygones, and essentially like we need to make this place heaven on earth. There's no escaping anymore. There's no, looking for lofty ideals and trying to get towards the Garden of Eden and be in heaven. And, like you go back to the song Gods on Sundowning, he's literally antagonizing the gods. So, like what Jung says about the psychological gods projecting from the unconscious contents of the collective unconscious, that is, him wrestling, saying, like, I'm worthy, watch me. And then Taking Me Back to Eden is him going, like, I'm here. Like it's an embodied, like, I'm here, I am worthy, and you will see. Like, I'm about to show you. And then Emergence steps perfectly into that. However, then we get this, detour that says, Caramel, there's things going on and I don't like it. And if you want me to continue my art, calm the fuck down. Apologies for swearing, but like calm down. And then we get Damocles, where it's like, I'm living with a sword dangling over my head, and unless you want this to stop, you don't know what this pressure above me feels like.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I think gosh, I think the whole, which I mean, I still haven't made full heads or tails of all this, but the whole feathered host, House Viridian thing, I think part of that is meant to kind of symbolize this conflict kind of within Vessel himself, that, you know, are we going to keep going? Are we going to let the house endure? Are we going to let the band keep going as it's gone on forever up to this point, which has obviously proven to be very successful? Or are we going to let the cycle end? What are we going to do with this inner monologue between Vessel and Sleep? Are we just going to drop that? Are we going to go a lot more personal direction? Where are we going to go with this? And I think part of what the Feathered Host and House Viridian represent is that inner conflict inside of him, and also the conflict that he knows that's going to cause within the fans. Now, it seems from the singles that we've gotten so far, Emergence very much seems to be aligned with House Viridian, and Damocles and Caramel much more with the Feathered Host. So I would expect if there's 10 songs of this album, you're probably going to get five uh, kind of like what five songs that are associated with House Viridian that are very much associated with uh, the story so far. It's going to be a conversation between him and Sleep. And I think we'll have three more songs from the Feathered Host kind of perspective of Vessel that are going to be a lot more personal. And I think that might be Sleep Token's direction moving forward with other albums is that, you know, if you stop this dialogue between him and Sleep, if you stop that alchemical process, that uh, process that Vessel's been going through ever since the one EP of him with this dialogue with Sleep, is it really the same band at that point? Um, there has to be some remnant of that that still has to remain. The house has to endure in a certain capacity. But also, I mean, as he said in Damocles, you know, if he keeps playing these golden grand pianos and keeps talking to voices in the shadows, everything's just going to feel the same. And so you gotta end the cycle into a certain capacity. And so what that means for the music moving forward, I would expect would be some sort of healthy integration, healthy balance between the two, where each album we can start to expect a little bit of both for each time. That's what I would come to expect, and I think that's also reflected in Vessel's attire. Uh, uh, a new costume for this album. You see that he's implemented the feathers into his design, and you see those magazine photos of him holding the swords with the feathers on his back. I think he's found a way personally for himself to integrate and accept both of these parts of himself, that both of these desires within himself are going to have to learn to coexist at the same time. Just as you have said, him and sleep are going to have to learn to coexist at the same time.
Definitely. Definitely. When I think of the title, even in Arcadia, Arcadia was meant to be this, pristine place of utopia where everyone was, everyone is equal, everyone is like everyone's provided for. However, like even in Arcadia, there's still filth, there's still death, there's still all the problems of being human. You don't get to bypass those things just because we're in utopia. That's the thing that everyone says about communism is it's like, yeah, like communism needs to work because we haven't done it right yet. Like we haven't projected the utopia yet. And, whilst it's a wonderful, ultimately naive thing to think that just because we haven't gotten it right yet doesn't like that's the reason that we should try it again because we haven't gotten it right. It's like when there's, anywhere between 50 million to 100 million people that have been killed by dictators worldwide, I don't think that gives it grounds to stand upon as a viable thing. Yes, utopia would be wonderful, living in unity where everyone is, essentially equal. There's no discrimination anymore. There's no power. There's no corruption. Ultimately, human beings are flawed and fallible. So even in Arcadia, that's going to happen too. And the feathered host side of things, like the house will endure, like that makes sense. The house will endure. The house is the structure. The house is the thing that everyone comes home to, that everyone comes to worship. Like this is the place where you bring your offerings. That is the house. It's the temple. It's the church. It's the axis mundi between realms. The world's tree. But on the other side, the feathered host, like I very much see the feathered host, especially Jerry, the black flamingo, as being vessel. But the iconography, if he had have come out and just said that he's an angel with wings, that would have been too on the nose and it would have been way too overt. So they've had to go the symbolic route. You know what I mean? So it's like, I am the
Yeah.
feathered host. This is what's going on with me and, my brothers in the band. You're a host, like I'm the host and you guys are a guest in my house. Please understand and accept and adhere to the rules and regulations inside of my house. I've invited you into Arcadia. I've taken you guys back to Eden. Like, we're going on this journey together, and if you don't like it, this feathered host is going to kick you out.
Yeah, man, bro, you were tiptoeing dangerously close to an episode I was about to release about. I'm so glad you think the flamingo is vessel too, because I do as well. That's where I've landed on this. I think the significance of that is, you know, the Arcadia aesthetic. It's very much a Greek mythology sort of aesthetic, and often in Greek mythology, the gods will present themselves as animals. And interact with human beings in that way. For example, Zeus was particularly fond of presenting himself as a swan. And I think what the black flamingo is, this is Vessel's kind of form. This is his animal kind of form, and Arcadia is uh, his house. Whether that be, I think, okay, we're gonna get really deep into the weeds here. So when we first see the black flamingo, you hear that kind of it sounds like a music box or something like that little ringing
Mhm.
playing out. The kind of music box you might hear in like a maybe like a child's bedroom. Um, and Arcadia is kind of like this place where this mental place where Vessel can kind of escape to this it's very it's got this very Alice in Wonderland vibe. It's got this childlike innocence
Yes.
quality to it. But part of the issue is, as we've seen in the visualizers, at the end of each visualizer, you get the little clips of these demonic kind of beings with swords, and they have uh, I don't know if it's feathers. I can't get a good enough look at them to tell, but they're fighting these legions of soldiers. And I think if we take Arcadia as kind of this metaphor for Vessel's kind of peace of mind, this mental world where he can escape to, like a child might have. Uh, as Vessel starts to grow up, this place starts to get filled with demons. It starts to get filled with, depression, with loneliness, with isolation, possibly even addictions. And they start to turn this pristine place that Vessel has created for himself and kind of hijack it. And that's when you get the Legion to come in to quote unquote save him.
Mm.
And I think the Legion represents the fans. It represents the product of what Vessel has created through his music. And what we see in each visualizer is yes, the fans have helped Vessel. They've defeated some of these demons, but as you see very clearly through each visualizer, they get more and more destructive as they go on. And to the point where they essentially burn the whole place down. And so, like, you've replaced one empire with another. Sure, Vessel's depression might be better than it was before. His loneliness might be better than it was before. But it's not really gone. It's been replaced by something else. Just as empires don't just fade away, they're replaced in the end.
Mm, definitely. Yeah, the thing that sparks to mind there is again coming back to if your wings won't find you heaven, I'll tear it down like an ancient bygone. It's like no matter what, this is what's going to happen. It's like again, even in Arcadia, there is death, destruction, there is disease, like there is no utopia. No matter what abstraction and level of consciousness, there will always be human problems. There will always be the fight against good versus evil. There will always be the necessity for like the Knights Templar. That's what I look at the Legion that is fighting off these demonic entities, these outsiders. Is the Legion coming across and essentially it's a last stand. It's a crusade for the good. It's like no matter what, like this is our house and you will respect it. We can live as bygones, we can live as equals, we can occupy the same place because ultimately, no matter where I can't remember who said it. It's like wherever I go, there I am. Where, like that problem of wherever the I is, the ego is, there's going to be me. There is the me underneath it all. And if I get out of a bad relationship or I get out of a bad job or anything like that, and I move away across the country, across the world, my problems in myself are still going to be there. That's the same thing for everyone on this planet. Is like no matter until you here's a Jung quote, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will call it destiny and you will call it fate. No, until you make the unconscious conscious, you will call it destiny and it will rule your life. I butchered it the first time. So that there was like no matter where you go, you have to look at that darkness inside of you. And the Legion, being the Knights Templar or whatever representation that you want to bring to it, they're constantly essentially like the light archetypes, keeping the balance of light and dark, light and shadow, making sure that everyone is kept equal. It's like this is our playground. This is heaven on earth, and we need to let each other just be, just exist. If we have to tear it down, if we have to light the entire building on fire, so let it be.
Hmm. That's very thought provoking. I hadn't quite thought about it from that perspective, but now I'm certainly going to be thinking about it from that perspective, of course. But isn't that the beauty of Sleep Token though? That that none of us know.
Yeah. Like again,
None of us know.
projecting unconscious contents, like that's what humans do. And so because, my worldview is very much shaped by Taoism philosophy, non-duality, like ascension, a lot of Gnosticism, a lot of Christianity, a lot of like Norse mythology as well. So that's how my unconscious is structured. That's the symbols that I see things through. So of course I'm going to see duality. I see duality in everything. And the idea is so that you can get to, for myself, is so that you can get to a place of acceptance for what is. There's no judgment, it just is. You don't need to label it as good or bad because ultimately it's our perspective that makes it good or bad.
Hmm. That is interesting. As I've said, I am a visitor in this world of Carl Jung, so there's still a lot of stuff around that I'm still kind of processing in my own mind. I think it's without question Jung was brilliant, very brilliant. I'm just still processing in my mind uh, how much of his theories I implement into my own thought process or belief system. Um, but I think one thing is certainly clear is that Sleep Token is definitely structured, or a lot of Sleep Token is structured around the work of Carl Jung. And uh, I will say one thing I do appreciate about Sleep Token is that as I've continued to look into them I've probably read more in the past. I think it's been doing this about 2 years, almost 2 years of this podcast than I ever have in my life. Just because there's so many little rabbit holes to go down whenever you're looking into Sleep Token, from, Carl Jung to Greek mythology to uh, reading books of literature like Faust. There's so many little rabbit holes to go down, but I think everything kind of ties back into Jung in some capacity, in some way, just because, you know, just as Sleep Token draws from so many influences, Jung also is drawing from so many uh, influences to create this kind of tapestry of his world as he's developing his theories about the collective unconscious. And I really appreciate Sleep Token for kind of inviting me into that world and uh, allowing me to wrestle with some of those ideas a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Like the more that you study Jung, the more that you study yourself. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned is no matter where he is pointing his lens, it is pointing directly back at you. Everything is a mirror representation of the self. And the more that you can understand everything in the outside world is a mirror representation for what you are underneath, the deeper a reflection and the deeper connection that you can forge with yourself. Which is the thing that I loved out of your Rumi episode, because Rumi holds everything and like the Sufi philosophy about God essentially being unconditional love. Everything is an expression of love. Of the plant medicine ceremonies that I've done, the breath work, and like I've studied consciousness inside and out for so long because I'm deeply fascinated by all of it. All of its expressions is just awe-inspiring. And when I've done plant medicine ceremonies, the ultimate like fundamental message that I get is everything is either the made through love or the absence of love. That's like the first split of polarity from God. And it's like the moment that it's either unconditional, non-conditional love, and then you go into conditional love, that's the first split away from divinity. Because I'm like, you're a man of faith. When you are praying, you're so much closer to the divine because you're actively communicating and listening and waiting for that beautiful, loving message from the Father, which is, oh my God, if everyone could just understand how powerful that part of faith is to talk to the divine and wait and listen and hope and see if you get symbols or signs or, even some words or downloads or inspirations or like anything. That moment where you can step outside of yourself, step out of your own BS and say, I don't have all the answers. I need some assistance from something that is above and beyond me, that is all knowing, all ever powerful, that is just the most loving, omnipotent thing ever. Like, I surrender and give myself over to your wisdom. Please help me. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and that's always something I was so fascinated about Jung is very, for lack of a better word, he's very pro religion in that sense. Now he obviously approaches it from a very different perspective, as I think uh, a Christian perspective or any individual religion's perspective. He's coming at it, I think, from a much more pragmatic sort of way. But that thing you just said about God being love, it just brought a verse into my mind. I believe it's 1 John 4:8. Whoever does not love does not know God. And I think that's something a lot of religions, and I think you point out as well, get very close to is that uh, God is love, and that's something, as a man of faith, as a Christian, that's something I hold very dearly. And I think it was Augustine, actually, Saint Augustine, who was saying that it might not have been Augustine, but he essentially said, if your theology, if your idea of God does not make you more loving, more kind, um, it's probably not a entirely accurate view. And I really, I think that's another thing that really kind of draws me into Sleep Token is that, I don't know the personal spirituality of Vessel or if he holds to any particular religion, but I think he is fascinated by the concept of love, and he sees love as something as more than just matter and motion,
Mm,
that it's something divine. And I think that calls to us in a certain sense. I think uh, whenever we experience love, I think even the most materialistic, naturalistic person, uh, it puts a rock in your shoe for sure. It at least makes you contemplate, like, is there more than just things moving around in the world? Um, is there something else in this world that's calling to me, calling out to me? So yeah, uh, love is great. God is love. And as a Christian, I just want to make clear that because sometimes I worry a little bit that because I do talk all the time about a band that claims to worship a deity called Sleep, I don't want anybody to get confused that I feel the same way. I believe God's love is made entirely manifest in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. That's where I land. Just as a disclaimer,
mm.
moving forward for anybody who might be confused as to where I stand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the pursuit of the divine for the individual is something that isn't emphasized enough in this day and age. Nietzsche said it best is God is dead and we killed him. And ultimately that was a an arrow pointing towards we were trying to erode the Judeo-Christian presuppositions of the West that established the West as is. Without that, the West doesn't exist because we don't have the fundamental substrate that holds everything together. From that moment, everything has started to decay. There's so many problems that have arisen out of not holding the divine above and beyond, and also as the container that allows everything to be. If there's no like Nietzsche was really huge on talking about the essentially, the will to power, the Übermensch, creating your own values and not being of that slave morality and not being, like master slave class and establishing your own self in the world. And he was very much an individualist that was, I mean, he was also a terrifying genius that had an IQ of like 200 sort of thing, where he graduated university and became a professor when he was a teenager. Like that man was terrifying. However, like he points to truth again through symbol. He says, we don't have the ability to know what's on the other side of not having Judeo-Christian presuppositions. We haven't created a world where that is safe for us to imagine new ways of being. That is safe for everyone to navigate through. And without having that container and without having the strong foundation to stand upon, everyone flounders. Everyone is looking for something that is approximating the divine, but no one knows the language or the symbols to navigate through that successfully in the modern age. Like we see a massive resurgence of people going back to Christianity, and especially men, like young men, are looking towards faith because they have nothing that's guiding them. So they're like, okay, well, let's go back to the last established worldview that people knew who they were and they knew where they sat in this world and they knew that they were protected and guided by something divine. Like to follow in the path of Jesus is to follow in the perfect man. Like that's very, very hard to do. To live by the commandments and to treat others as you want to have to yourself. And, like all of these things are impossible to do unless you have a guiding North Star showing you the way.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You really hit the nail on the head there. It is, it's impossible to do, but that is part of the beauty of the resurrection is that it offers forgiveness.
Mm,
Uh, that though we cannot do it perfectly, that God knows we can't. That's the whole point of the crucifixion is that, I need forgiveness because I can't do it. I am trying to follow in the steps of a perfect man in the hopes that as I continue to follow, he will shape me into more and more of his image. Uh, and so that I might be more like him by the end of it. But yeah, I need that forgiveness, brother. I need it because I'm an imperfect person, and I will never claim to be anything else. Uh, but yeah, isn't philosophy fun? Yeah, Nietzsche's brilliant, undoubtedly. Most philosophers are brilliant. Um, the hardest part about reading philosophy is learning the language of philosophy, because it's almost like they're speaking another language. Uh, but no, I appreciate Nietzsche. I appreciate how honest Nietzsche is with his thoughts. I appreciate I appreciate anybody who's willing to go uh, and examine their thoughts the way, people like Nietzsche and Sartre and Kierkegaard, some of the major kind of existentialists are willing to examine themselves and examine, what is purpose, what is meaning in this world. Is there objective purpose or meaning in this world? Is that something we have to make or determine within ourselves? Uh, and I think Sleep Token also is very philosophical and invites us into the great conversation of philosophy, of you know, the pursuit of the divine. You
mm,
know, the divine is love, and it's mysterious, and it calls to us. And as we pursue that, as we pursue the truth, as we pursue this knowledge of the divine, that it changes something inside of us in the process. If you want to compare it to alchemy, that's cool. Uh, uh, whatever. But we understand that just as me as a Christian, that I believe that pursuing Jesus and following Jesus, that changes something internally in me and molds me into something different. As Vessel has been pursuing sleep and pursuing love and his own spiritual journey, this has been changing him, and that's physically manifest in his in his attire and his new mask and everything. It's all about uh, change in a way.
mm. Yeah, and like the thing with the change is it's not about changing the past anymore. I don't know if you've noticed this or anyone else has noticed this. In the earlier two albums, specifically, This Place Will Become Your Tomb is talking about changing the past. Like the song Atlantic, where like I've hypothesized that he's, had a unaliving attempt and he's in hospital and he's on a gurney and he's got doctors around him. They're the floating planets in the vacuum of space. He's got his parents around there, the frozen statues. Like this is coming to terms with, okay, like I can't keep going down this path anymore. I need to turn a corner because what was, I can't dwell in the past anymore. There's nothing I can do about changing the past or who I used to be, how I used to treat people, my broken heart, the failed relationships, like all of my fallible, like all of my humanness. There's nothing that I can do about it in the past. Please. And it's like going, it's like being in prayer and holding that reverence and saying, I am not perfect and I need help. I need help so that I can make amends, so that I can essentially take this burden out of my heart and out of my mind and do the best that I can moving forward so that I can live a life of relative peace and love. Obviously purpose and meaning comes into it as well. And then that's where the shift starts happening. And it's like, I'm going into Taking Me Back to Eden. It's like I know what has happened. However, I have to do this no matter what. Like I have to become someone new. Like I need to integrate those parts of myself so that I can so that I can look in the mirror and be like, yeah, no, like I'm okay with who I am. I'm proud of the man that I actually am. I'm proud of the one that I see standing in front of me in that mirror.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you one thing I really appreciate about Carl Jung is that Carl Jung, is all about you got to confront yourself, man. Like if you want to be your truest self, who you're de- quote unquote designed to be, you got to confront in Jung's language, he uses the term shadow. In Christianity, we call it the flesh. But you got to confront those parts of yourself and you got to acknowledge that's not something separate from me. That's me.
Mm,
Like that's a part of me that I need to reckon with and acknowledge that I'm not acknowledging. And yeah, that's the hardest part of the journey is getting started. It's just, as you said, calling out to the divine and saying, I need help. Um, and gosh, and I think whenever you do that, whenever you reach out and say, I can't do this on my own, I'm not perfect, and I need help, that's where I think real meaningful change can really start to begin in your life. And I think that's where it's really began. And in Vessel is whenever he acknowledged, I can't change the past. The past is the past. I can't change what's been done, but I need help and I have to move forward in some way. I have to become someone new. And the acceptance of that, I think, that's where accepting that you need to become someone new is where that is when that's kind of lays down the soil for which real growth can develop. You can really blossom into who you truly are is when you acknowledge that I'm not perfect and I need help.
mm.
Um, and also thank you for, letting me, share my thoughts on this kind of stuff. I don't, I know some people get a little uncomfortable when I talk about my faith on my podcast. And I never intend to do that. It's what I think, it's what I believe, and I hold it with conviction and humility. But so thank you, Dave.
No, of course. Like when it comes to any expression of the divine, you need to you need to have it expressed, especially like your North Star is clearly Christianity, God, and Jesus. Like you're following the footsteps of a great man. Anyone that feels uncomfortable with anyone talking about anything to do with divinity or faith or religion or anything like that, they have not looked at those unconscious parts of themselves that is repressing and denying that. This comes from someone who used to be a devout atheist. Like I used to like growing up over here in Australia, we don't really have a strong presence of religion. You know, we've got pockets of it. However, we live in a very multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-faith hodgepodge of multiculturalism essentially. Like at the moment it's not doing too well. It's pretty divided at the moment as it is everywhere. However, like atheists versus people that have faith, agnostics, everyone else, you can fit into society as long as you don't shove it down everyone's throats, and that's how we've relatively lived well in Australia. The moment that I confronted the divine because I rejected religion for so long. The moment that I confronted the divine was in a plant medicine ceremony because I was at wit's end and I was suicidal. I couldn't face life anymore. I couldn't face the man that I was, the pain that I'd inflicted, the manipulation that I'd used, like the whole anima possession thing. The reason why I latched onto that for my video was because that was me. Like the way that I treated women in the past was horrendous. I used to lie, cheat, steal, manipulate, like gaslight people. I was an expert. Because I'm neurodivergent, I learn patterns. And when I learn patterns that I don't know right from wrong inherently in my body because I'm disconnected from my body, I just think this is an approved way of being. I'll tell you a quick story before I go off on even more of a tangent. When I was about
Please
17,
do.
when I was about 17, there was a girl that I was pursuing who had a boyfriend. And majority of the girls that I went for from about 16 years old until maybe 21, 22, all had partners. And it was the pursuit that I wanted. It was the chase. It was I would turn myself essentially into a chameleon to change whatever I needed to be to get what I wanted out of them. super manipulative, super dark. Because for me, lust and libido are the hardest things for me to tackle. Like, and I've done, back when I was a bodybuilder, I've done steroids, so it made that even worse. The pursuit of flesh was all I cared about up until I was about 26 years old. And then I had this moment of, essentially clarity where I was like, I can't keep living this way anymore because the burden that I feel in my heart from having a daughter and her growing up into a world where she's going to meet men that are potentially like I am, I can't deal with that. So it's not good enough. I have to do something about it. And that call to, higher consciousness, to integration and stuff like that, I didn't meet the divine until I was in a plant medicine ceremony when I was held by the most loving, kind, compassionate energy that broke every part of myself and made me reconcile with all of the ways that I'd treated people in the past, with my core wounding and everything like that. And then from that moment forward, I was like, much like, in the second album, I was like, I have to become better. I have to make this new. I have to do everything in my power to be the best man possible so that especially women know that they are safe around me and I don't want anything from them and they can just be. They don't have to protect themselves. They don't have to worry about me. I'm not a predator. If anything, I'm a shepherd looking out for them. Like, I have to do this. I have to reclaim that part of myself because I've damaged so many people in the past. That's why it's
Well,
so
thank you for
important to have
sharing that,
faith.
man.
Like, if you
Yeah.
don't look at the divine as calling the best of you forward, then you've got a lot more work to do. There's so many people that I've had from messages and emails and comments and stuff like that from all of the videos that I've put out around psychology, spirituality, sleep token and stuff like that. And, doing shadow work on camera as much as I don't want to do it, as much as I don't want to, show that part of myself because it's a very vulnerable, private part of myself. But if I can show people my map towards the divine that they can make their own and use their own little changes and stuff like that, hopefully they can find some version of salvation and peace and love for themselves. Because the more that you can love yourself, the more that you can love everyone else.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's reflected in the teachings of Jesus when he says, uh, love others as you love yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Treat others the way you would have yourself be treated. The idea, being is the same amount of grace, the same amount of patience, the same amount of forgiveness, the same amount of frankly love that you show yourself on a day-to-day basis, uh, show that to others whenever we have shortcomings, whenever we fail morally, whenever it's ourselves, we always have this tendency to find a way to excuse it or find some way other than just acknowledging, hey, I did something wrong. We always find a way to forgive ourselves. We always find a way to show ourselves more grace and patience than we show others. And that's really what Christ calls us to, is that same amount of grace and patience that you show yourself whenever you have shortcomings, show that to others as well. And I particularly like that thing you said that when you confront the divine or are confronted by the divine, it calls you to better yourself. It calls you to, I believe, to come home and to be who you're designed uh, to be. Uh, yeah, yeah, well worded. Yeah.
Yeah. And who we're all designed to be is an expression of love. Ultimately, like,
Yes.
the Sufis, they said it best when it comes or like Rumi's quotes about love and everything being it's it's all navigating you towards more wholeness, and the highest abstraction of wholeness is love.
Yeah, God is love, and coming from a Christian standpoint, we are created to be His image bearers, to be made in His image, to do as He does. And so, if God is love, and we are called to be in His image, to be His representatives on this earth, to do as He does, we are called to be love as well. Now, I don't think we can be God. I think God is a species unique from us, but we are called to mirror Him, to be His image, to love one another as Christ has loved us.
Mm.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, like the last line of the crucifixion, forgive them, Father, for they know what they've
mm,
done. Like
powerful.
the that that hurts in the most wonderful way possible, much like listening to Sleep Token's lyrics. It's like that's such a high level of faith and trust and just love. Like they don't like these brothers and sisters, they do not know what they are doing. Please forgive them. Allow them to have forgiveness, to live, to be themselves, because of my sacrifices. Like I'm willing to give up everything, the highest sacrifice, so that they can live. Like that
Mm.
is so admirable and so wonderful. Like if
Yeah,
we could just
and
all aim to be a little bit more like that to one another and just be like, hey, like I trust you to live your highest expressions because you don't know what you're doing. Like I don't know what I'm doing, but like let's get through this together. The better that we can become as a species.
mm, yeah, gosh, I don't even know if we as human beings are necessarily capable of that kind of love on our own. I think that's the kind of love that's got to come. That's got to come from you say it's got to come from the divine. It's got to come from somewhere else other than just me. I guess one of the craziest things about uh, when I became a Christian is that uh, your head starts to get filled with ideas that don't feel necessarily like they come from you,
Mm,
particularly ideas that call you to forgiveness, ideas that call you to self-sacrificial love, and those things. I think it was an artist called Levi the poet who said it the best. Those things don't come to me from me. Um, Confronting my own self. I'm selfish, man. I'm prideful. Part of the reason I need to be anonymous is because it's not because I don't like the spotlight. It's because I like it too much.
mm,
Um, I don't need it. I really don't. I want it. I don't need it. I don't need people to know my name. I don't need people to know who I am. Because I know how dangerous that is for me. I know how selfish I am. I know how prideful I can be. And whenever I started following Jesus, it makes you aware of those things. When you're in conversation with the divine, when you're, for me, when I'm searching the scriptures, it's like a mirror, holding a mirror to myself, calling me to point out like these parts of myself I don't like to admit easily, and to do something about them, to become not necessarily someone new, as Sleep Token puts it, but to become who I'm actually designed to be in
mm.
Christ.
Yeah, yeah. The way that I have interpreted, the whole like become someone new is through Jung again. Essentially, the version of you that is hearing these messages from their song or from scripture or wherever you're hearing it from, that is calling a part of you to emerge, to heal all those, dark sides of yourself from the shadow. Um, it's all of it is pointing at abstractions of the divine just through a different lens. So it's different symbols, different words, like words are symbols as it is. So Jung's framework for me has been the thing that allows me to connect to faith so that I can let that new version of me come through. However, this is an interesting part for those that are listening. The part of you that wants that breakthrough isn't the part that will, like, isn't the version of you that will be able to create it. The one who has the desire has to disappear so that that new version of you who has that embodied can step forward. You cannot have the two. That's cognitive dissonance. That's holding two core beliefs that are as truth. The moment that you have that, you have instability, you have incongruence. So the one that wants it needs to disappear so the one that has it can step forward. And that's one of the hardest things to do is it's like, I want, I want, I want. It's like, I want all these things. I have all these desires. However, the version of you that is ready to step forward is already embodied in those things and recognizes that it is not separate from you. That's why it's so
What an
important to
interesting
continue doing
thought.
shadow work.
Yeah, what an interesting way of putting that. Because while you were talking about that, I started thinking about the artwork for like sundowning and the artwork for This Place Will Become Your Tomb. The album covers for each one, I personally think that the cover for Sundowning is actually Vessel's silhouette kind of fading into the white background, and we see kind of a similar thing. This place would become your tomb, where it's Vessel with his hands raised up. Uh, I guess in exaltation as his body is dissipating into bubbles and disappearing in this ocean. uh, the old him has to go, and he understands that this process that he's undergoing, that is a part of it. So I think that idea that you just said, that very much lines up with Jung. That very much lines up with everything you've just said. He has to disappear and become someone new. Sorry, that's just a thought that just popped into my head.
Yeah, no, let's like to further on from what you said, that iconography of him falling into the depths. It's like, when does the drop of water become the ocean?
Yes.
And whenever I get into these higher places of being where I like, bliss and euphoria and love and connection, like they're just oozing out of me, and it's like, where do I end and where does the divine begin? Like the moment that the me, the self steps out of frame, and then it's just whatever comes through me. It's like when I made Anima, like I literally put aside a whole day. I told my fiance, I was like, Rach, I'm really sorry. I have something that's calling from deep within me. I have to step out of the way because it's eating me alive. I need a full day of filming and then possibly the rest of the weekend so I can get this out, because it's like there's so much turmoil inside of me right now. I have to step aside. And then she goes, "Yeah, babe, of course. Like I know I've been watching you. I know you've got to do this. Go do what you need to do. However, when you're finished, make sure you come back and you pick up your side of the responsibilities." And I was just so thankful for that. I just thanked her profusely, gave them all, my girls and Rach, massive kisses and cuddles, and I said, "All right, I'm going in here and I'm stepping aside. I'm letting something speak through me that I don't know where it comes from." Like obviously I'm into Jung and I'm into sleep token and I have, this intelligence to articulate it this way. However, I very much stepped aside and I was like, I need to let what is going to come through.
Hmm. That is fascinating. Yeah, I love how your family is so cool with that. My wife has been very patient with me as well whenever I get into those uh for me I call it like a creative hyperfixation or creative spiral. Uh because sometimes I'll get into these, just moments where I'll have this kind of breakthrough moment. And I'm like, I gotta write a whole episode about this, but it takes me super long to write an episode, and I might have to disappear for a little while to do that. And so it very much helps having a family who is supportive of that. My wife is actually the only person who actually, well, my wife and my very close friend knows I actually do this podcast. It's not just people who listen to the podcast who don't know that who I am. My family, most of my friends have no clue I'm this obsessed with Sleep Token either.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. And like the thing that I love about the duality piece, just another thing through my lens is having like being masculine, but having the feminine there to hold that space. To say, no, no, no,
Mhm.
like I see you, I witness you, go do the things that you need to do. However, come back. Come back when it's time, and then we can unite once more. One of the greatest things that I've seen across time is behind every great man is a great woman who's willing to put up with his stuff.
Yes. Yeah, for sure, brother, for sure. That's my case at least.
I'd love to touch back on the purpose and meaning thing that you were talking about when it comes to faith. Where do you
Yeah.
think that purpose and meaning comes from for each individual, from your perspective? Like, where do you think that comes from? Is that something that's a part of the creation of you that you're meant to step into, or like, how do you feel that works for you?
So I come at it, my identity is found in my Christian perspective. So please, audience, forgive me. I'm not trying to preach at you. I'm simply sharing my perspective as far as where all of our purposes and meaning comes from each individual. I think Scripture teaches that we are all made to be mirror images of God. We are made in the image of God to do as he does on the earth, or going back to Genesis, to make the whole earth. like Eden, to be his representatives in this created uh, space. And I think that's our designed purpose for all of us. And I think what Scripture teaches is that at some point or another, uh, we all stray from that to some capacity. We all succumb to our own desires over God's desires. We all succumb to some form of selfishness or dishonesty. And at some point, we kind of forfeit that purpose. And what Christ invites us back to is to reclaim that purpose, to become human as he was, as we were always designed to be. Really, what Scripture teaches is really trying to teach us that Christ is actually the only truest human being that's ever lived. The only person who's lived fully in line with the purpose he was designed for. And so that's from my Christian perspective, that's where I believe our meaning and our purpose comes from, is that we are meant to have a relationship with God. We're meant to have that relationship with the divine, that loving relationship, and we're meant to be representatives of him on the earth, to take care of it, to tend to his creation. Uh, and I think God wants a family. I think that's what we see in Scripture. He doesn't need a family. He doesn't need people to help him. I think God is just relational, and our purpose and our meaning comes from being in relationship with him as the divine, being in relationship with him. And I think that relationship is, for us today, is established through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus.
Mm, that's beautiful. I think it's so important that, again, coming back to that shadow piece of the divine and the rejections that we all have whenever we hear people spread beautiful messages like yours, but we get like society gets caught in the weeds. It's like, oh, like that's just, Bible talk. I don't want to hear any of that. However, if you could strip that human hubris, that ego from it that says, I know better, you're just projecting, all these sorts of things, and hear the message of love and connection and unity underneath it all, that would be the thing that would unite everyone. However, because people will not look into that mirror at themselves and say, okay, cool, like I'm fallible, like I'm wrong. I need to do something about this. I need to treat others better. I need to treat myself better. I need to hold better standards. Like ultimately, everything should be approximating the divine, should be approximating what it is to, to be the best human possible, to be the most forgiving, the most loving, the most kind, compassionate. And like kindness and compassion isn't, like turning a cheek and rolling over and, letting people just get away with things. It's holding boundaries. It's saying, hey, I know you're better than that because I know that I'm better than that. Let's uphold a firm standard here and let's be the best versions of us possible because you've fallen right now and I can see the divine in you. Okay. I know that you are beautiful. You got a big, beautiful heart. Like, let's bring that out. Let's be the best version that we can be. Because,
Yeah, yeah. I love that part you said about uh, compassion. When Christ calls us to be compassionate, when he calls us to turn the other cheek, he's not calling us to be a doormat. What Scripture tells us is that whenever we repay evil for evil, whenever we repay violence with violence, insult for insult, God, it just continues this cycle of just more insults, more violence, and it just keeps going and it keeps going. But the idea of showing compassion and turning the other cheek it ends. It ends with you. It stops right there. Um, and that's part of what Christ calls us to do is, even though the kingdom of God is not fully complete in this world right now, uh, to live as citizens of the kingdom of God as we continue to live in this world, in this moment, to continue to live as if our identities are found in the kingdom of God, as we live amongst the world. In that sense, we have kind of a dual citizenship there, the scripture puts it, we are in the world, but we are not of it. Many people might think it's acceptable that when someone insults you, that I'm just gonna insult you back. when someone wants to hurt you, then I'm going to try to hurt you back. But Christ calls us uh, to acknowledge that we ourselves are not perfect and are actually responsible for some of that harm that goes on in the world, and to forgive, uh, and to trust, hand it over to God and to trust. And to me, that has been one of the most relieving things, is not feeling like I have to take everything into my own hands. Whenever someone wrongs me or wants to hurt me or insults me, I don't have to repay that in kind, that I can trust God with that. That, you know what, I'm not perfect either. I've insulted people unjustly too. I've hurt people unjustly too, and God has forgiven me. And so I'm not actually gonna repay evil for evil. I'm gonna ask God to forgive that person too, so that they might be able to experience the same sort of love and compassion that I experience every day in my life.
Mm, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So I think the listeners might be wondering why I've steered the conversation in such a faith heavy. Like I'm not a man of a traditional faith. However, I know
Right.
that the moment that I started connecting with the divine, meditating, praying, like using Jung as a lens to view spiritual, religious contents through so I can understand it for my own worldview, it's made more purpose and meaning in my life. The more that I can understand it for myself, the more that I can explain it in a way to people that might not be in that same level of awareness yet. That might not be in like religiously minded or philosophically minded or anything like that. It's a way that I can use words through my embodiment to show, hey, this is a path that you could potentially go to reconnect with a deeper part of yourself. Faith and a relationship and a dialogue with the divine is so important. It's what humans are meant to do. Like I did a video recently on TikTok that was talking about emergence and the first part of the chorus where Vessel says, "Come out from underneath you are," and just like the feeling that of awe that it gives you. Put your hands on your heart, breathe into what he's saying. Essentially, this is what I could imagine being in church and everyone in community being together. It's like we're in a place of worship, and it's a different expression of the divine. Obviously, it's not Christianity, it's not anything established. However, that part of humanity to come together, to come into congregation together, to be in community, to be with your brothers and sisters in worship of something greater than the self is what is necessary. Like to understand that we are all in this together, we're all in community. And that's like going back to me being at the concert last year. There was a hush, like everyone shut up and just like experienced it when, the songs were finished. Everyone cheered and applauded, but then because they're silent on stage, there's no talking or anything. It's like, okay, into the next song and into the next piece of worship, into the next piece of, like expression of the divine through this unique vessel. And like that's all pinpointing back towards a relationship for everyone individually to connect with a deeper part of themselves and also to hold awe and reverence for the divine. It's what humans do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I definitely think, I think part of what we're all, that hush you described, I also experienced that whenever I went to see Sleep Token uh, uh, during the Teeth of God tour. I think, whenever we see someone going through that process within themselves of trying to, reckon with their own internal world, reckon with their own flaws, and uh, to a certain capacity interact with the divine, it does kind of warrant that kind of it warrants you to kind of lean in,
Mm,
whether that be out of curiosity or interest. Uh, I think the current zeitgeist, at least where I'm from right now, is I think we see a lot of people right now who are opening back up to spirituality in some sort or another, and that might not be expressly Christian, but I definitely know there are a lot fewer atheists now than there were maybe a couple years ago, and I think I think that might contribute to why Sleep Token has really blown up so much is that Sleep Token kind of captures that newfound rebirthed interest in something more than just matter and motion, something more than just myself, something that calls me to better myself in some way and confront the darkest parts of me.
Yeah, definitely. I think any great art will call you forward to contend with deep parts of yourself that you might not have expected or even had any awareness around as well. You know, some of the shadow work that I've done just through hearing a song that potentially I reject. So, like, I recently reacted to Damocles and I put it out as a shadow work piece because the first 20 times I didn't like it. I was like, no, this is a very boring song. I don't like the lyrics under it. And I was just dismissive of it. And then I was like, okay, cool. Like, time for me to step into my practice and to understand, this is a mirror for myself. And what I uncovered was, this essentially emerging piece that I'm working on that I've seen many times before, but I didn't have this lens to view it through. And it's potentially a new archetype that I've seen from like emerging out of the unconscious. And it's the archetype of the performer. So it's this symbol that everyone has a light expression and a dark expression of. And going through my dark expression of the performer and how dirty and toxic and, like fraudulent it feels because I'm not being myself. I'm being a fictitious version as I step into, putting the mask of that performer on. It doesn't feel authentic. And then that's where I started to find a lot of love for the song Damocles because I was like, shit, it's showing me more of myself. Cool. Okay, cool. I understand what I need to do. And ultimately, anything that can connect you to that part of yourself that you suppress, deny, and avoid, the shadow, is a thing that builds more wholeness. It integrates more. It collapses the duality. It collapses the cognitive dissonance inside of yourself, and it brings you more peace. Like, if anything that the world could use more is a little bit more peace.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Uh, and I think that's part of, I think, gosh, my library's in my other room. I'd have to find the Jung book. I think it's Jung's book, The Undiscovered Self. Uh, and I think that's really the book where Jung really talks about, like, listen, it's like if we really want peace in the world, then we gotta do something within ourselves uh, first. We have to, in a sense, rediscover ourselves, confront ourselves. Uh, Now I can't remember all the details of that book, but you saying that just reminded me that I need to read that book again.
Good. I'm glad the mirror that you reflected into showed you exactly what you needed to see. That's the thing that I love
Yeah.
about discussions like this is, something that you will say will trigger something in me and go, oh, cool. Like I need to look at that. The thing that I wrote down earlier around the aesthetics and the mask, there's something there for me because I haven't gone into it before. So you talking about that made me reflect and go, huh, okay, cool. I need to look further into that mirror. And then just then, like I did for you, like this is what humanity does best. We are all mirror reflections of parts of ourselves to connect deeper to ourselves, to love ourselves, to hold compassion, and then also reflect that out in the world. So the more mirrors that we're showing to everyone else is like, hey, you don't need to be so dogmatic. You don't need to be so controlling or anything like that because it's actually an unhealed part of yourself. Like, let's call you into the light. Let's work through this together as a community so that we can all live here in this beautiful paradise that we live in. Because I don't know if you've looked around, man, like this world is pretty beautiful. Like it's pretty
It is.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is beautiful and it's flawed as mo most beautiful things are.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, yeah. But can you think of any other band, maybe other than Tool, that can spark these kinds of discussions as we have journeyed on for this past, how long we've been talking, a little over,
Pretty clear.
never mind, we've about 2 hours.
Yeah, I can't think of any other. I mean, there's obviously bands that have, huge lore behind them that, are deliberately using the hero motif, the hero's journey through their lyrics and, iconography and stuff like that. However, nothing has gripped the attention of me quite like that. Not even Tool. Like
Yeah.
Tool was cool when I got into them, and they were one of the first bands that brought concepts of the shadow and Jung to me, where I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's weird that I'm reading Jordan Peterson while he talks about Jung, and then Tool is talking about the shadow and stuff. Okay, cool. There's clearly a mirror there showing me something that I need to look further into. But for Sleep Token to do what they've done with their fan base and make them so mad and like so deeply in love and reflective and heal things with themselves and be willing to, it, like I said in a video last year, I can't understand the level of obsession. Like it's literally possessed my consciousness where, like talking in lyrics comes to mind. The thing that I love seeing in the community is people that are brand new that dive into the discography and then all of a sudden they accidentally Freudian slip like put in some lyrics into their normal speech.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like it's a cult.
Yeah, but like I mean, to be honest, it's a cult without the cult.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no one at the
Right.
front and center claiming that they're the one through to the divine because all of the lyrics is essentially talking about going through the self.
Yeah. Yeah, and gosh, that just reminded me of a comment that someone left on a previous post of mine about someone was saying that, Sleep Token, like they had a much more distinct sound in like the one and two EPs. And I'm like, I don't know if I necessarily see it that way. I think they've always had a very distinct, not only sound, but just approach to music in general. And it's that distinction that people have just latched onto. Um, this call to self-examination in a way that is deeper and broader than many other bands are capable of doing, and it all revolves around this story that Vessel's been telling, this healing fiction that he has created for himself that we project ourselves onto and kind of adopt as our own to a certain extent. We are all, I guess, in sleep token terms, we're all vessels in our own way, reckoning with the inner parts of our psyche, with the inner parts of our own darkness, with our own shadows, to put it in Jung's terms.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Like especially from a music standpoint. Like yes, they've had elements. However, as musicians, as they've improved, and obviously because Vessel's the one that tracks everything before they go to the studio.
Yeah,
And, I don't know what they were for this album in the recording process. However, being that it's Vessel and Vessel 2 going in, laying everything down, like they're the meat and potatoes of everything. They're the things that give sustenance. They're the ones that have developed themselves artistically, musically throughout. Like there's been elements in the first, in the EPs, even in through into Sundowning, but it's just an evolution of their sound. And who knows how different it's actually going to get now that they've signed to RCA. It could become more mainstream. There could be more radio edits. There could be untold amounts of things. At the same time, they could go a completely, turn about face and just release some stuff that's never going to get airtime that absolutely melts our faces, and that's kind of what I'm hoping for as well. I'm hoping that there's some elements where yeah the house is divided, but at the same time it's like we still are Sleep Token. Yes, we're going on this different journey. It's an evolution, but everything that we've done prior has been an evolution that was built upon the previous thing.
yeah. I think they'll always have that core, distinct identity about themselves. I mean, I'm certain that as they continue on, with RCA or with any other label they may go on to in the future, they've reached a point in their career and their fame, and that you know. There's going to have to be some compromise, and I don't think there's any way around that. But I think I trust the artistry of Vessel and Two as the main songwriters, that there'll always be that beneath all of that, there will always be the core identity that is Sleep Token at the end of the day. And I don't think we'll ever fully lose that. I do think it will continue to grow and blossom into something different, though.
Definitely. I mean, ultimately, everything, including what you've put out, what I've put out, and what everyone else has put out, is pure speculation unless it officially comes from them. And that's
Right,
the
of
biggest thing
course.
that everyone needs to remember is like, this is all projection. like everything, all of the comments, all of the, the wonderful things that we go through, plus all of the toxic things, that's all projection of unconscious contents. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's still a part of your, like, the other side of your psyche that hides in wait, that talks through symbols, and will come out in unhealed ways if you're not looking at it voluntarily.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, anything to do with sleep token, you have, gosh, you have one line and one person, and you'll have three opinions. Uh, just because there's just so much, it's just written in such a way that just invites you just to ponder and think. Uh, and it's just cryptic enough. It's just cryptic enough to give you something to really chew on and think about and become introspective in a way. And I do think moving forward, we'll probably see more songs that maybe aren't as cryptic as we've been accustomed to, songs like Caramel and Damocles. But I think because that is a core part of Sleep Token's identity, we'll never fully lose that. And I'm confident in that. I think the person behind Vessel, the creator of the band, I think if it ever reached a point where he felt like he might lose that, he'd probably find some way to end it gracefully. Uh, just because, this is clearly something that, man, you can't fake passion, man. You can't fake integrity. You can't fake, uh, you know, loving this project like he does. This is something deeply personal to him, and I don't think he'll ever fully sell out as many people fear. I think he understands there'll be compromise, and there's already been some compromise, I think, but the core is still there. And I think the core identity of Sleep Token will always still be there at the end of the day.
Yeah, for sure. I think, speculating again, obviously, I think there's a potential in the future for, I don't know if, like, for more interviews and more media and stuff like that, much a lot like what Two did with Drumeo. I
I
think
think so
that's
too.
I think there's going to be clauses inside of their contract that require them to do more official media so that the RCA can make money back, because it's a
Right.
big investment that they're putting out there to, for one, production, but two, marketing, venues, like lighting, sound engineers, like everything from this stage forward is essentially of grandeur. This is arenas. This is everything is going to be massive from here on in. So the way that version of the machine works is through going on talk shows, going on massive podcasts, like doing all this big media to get into the limelight, which is interesting because he wants to hide from the limelight, which is a perfect shadow representation. It's like, shit, this is the thing that I have to integrate.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think they're definitely I think we'll definitely see more things akin to what we saw on Drumeo, and yeah, I think they're just really trying to prepare us that, you know, the band as it's been before. The one EP era, it's gone, it's over. The two EP era, it's gone, it's over. Sundowning's gone and over. This Place Will Become Your Tune, gone and over. Even Take Me Back to Eden, that era is gone and over. Uh, this is what they're going to be moving forward. We'll still have the core of what Sleep Token is, but this is going to be different. There probably will be more media coverage in ways that, are going to make some people upset. They're going to make some people upset. Uh, God forbid Vessel ever talk using his actual voice. But, anything's possible at this point. And I think I've just come to a place of just acceptance of that. And really, I mean, this is a great thing, for the band, that they've reached this level of success. And, I don't want to be the person who's like, well, you're not making the kind of stuff I want anymore. You're not making it the way I want it anymore. I want to try to be the kind of person who's open and receptive to all of that. And even if they were to grow in a particular direction that maybe didn't even personally uh, call out or speak to me as deep of a level anymore, I think I'd always, appreciate them. I don't expect that I'll probably have this hyperfixation with Sleep Token when I'm 60, 70, 80 years old, but I have it now. It's meaningful to me now, and so I'm gonna appreciate it, in the moment. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciating the artistry for what it is and not what you think it should be. Because who are
Yes.
you to say what their art is?
Right.
Art is art. Art is always going to be subjective. No matter what lens you look at it through, like you can find fault in everything. You can find greatness in pretty much everything too. It's a matter of perspective. And the thing that I keep constantly bringing back, and the reason why I harping on about perception is projection, is because you don't see things as you don't see things as they are. You see them as you are unconsciously. And some of the comments that I get from people, or even some of the hate-filled messages I get from people, they're like it's just music, bro. Like you just don't understand. You're over intellectualizing it. I'm like, okay, yes, your perspective is right, as well as my perspective, as well as the band's official perspective. Like all of us are seeing it through our lenses. You can't be better than, you can't be more correct than someone else. It's all projection. So how about everyone calm the F down and let's just, enjoy the art for what it is. It's going to be what it is. It can't be anything other than what it is because otherwise it would be that thing.
Yeah. That's a funny way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, brother, I hate to do this. I hate to cut this short, but I've turned my air conditioner off so that it wouldn't be blowing into this microphone. I'm pouring sweat right now, dude.
Understandable,
So
man.
we may have to wrap this
Not
up
too
here
loud.
pretty soon. I'm about to die.
I really appreciate you for jumping on and for having this a wonderful conversation, for bearing your heart and soul for us to hear, and for having this beautiful conversation with me has been absolutely amazing. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you've put out there as well. And if there's anything that you wish to share with anyone, the floor is yours. Go for it.
Well, Dave, no, man. Thank you for having me. The honor's all mine. I've been a huge fan ever since the Anima video, of course. And yeah, as far as a final word, Sleep Study podcast. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, I believe, Amazon Music probably as well. I think. I'd love for you to come over if you're interested in Dave's content. I think you'd be really interested in analyzing the lyrics to Sleep Token with me. And if you're over here from my podcast listening to Dave's stuff, listen to Dave's stuff. Dave's great. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and man, I look forward to watching your channel continue to grow and develop in the future. I'm so honored to be having this conversation right now. This is the only other podcast I've ever been on other than my own, the very first. And so, thank you for this opportunity to kind of get out of my comfort zone a little bit and have some really thought-provoking conversation.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And as for links and everything, they'll be down in the description to go follow the host over on the Sleep Study podcast and everywhere else that you get to see his memes and stuff too.
Yeah, the memes have been a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you so much, guys. Much love. Take care, and we'll see you next time. You know what you need to do. Like, comment, share this around, subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for all of the awesome things coming out of R.Y.S.E because we're only just getting started. Thank you so much for being here watching another video. Much love, take care, and follow me to rise higher.